English 4540, how are you doing? I hope this week is going well. I wanted to talk to you briefly about what I'm asking for in terms of the project proposals for the chapbook that I'm asking you to write for our textbook. Now, I'm asking for a proposal to be turned in. I'm going to ask you to submit it below. You can see on this thread, also below my video, there are some questions. I'm going to kind of walk you through those questions to make sure that we have a clear sense of what we're talking about. I'm also going to give you a couple of questions that I was going to ask, but I didn't. And I'm going to explain to you what I'm thinking with those and why I didn't ultimately ask and why they're still important. So I want you just to submit your response in proposal form below. And I want you to answer these 4 questions that I've got laid out here. And then, as I said, I'm going to explain these a little bit. I know some of us are pretty clear in what we're doing, some of us less so. That's okay. I want to get this all together by the time that we would be meeting next week. So as long as you get a proposal in over the next several days, that's okay. You can let some other people go first. So if you are somebody who's feeling more confident about this, who's talked about your idea, who I have talked to and told you that your idea is good, try to go first. And then the handful of us who are more skeptical here, we can go after. I want to make sure that we have a sense of where we are on this and what we're all kind of feeling and thinking at this point. So here are the questions that I've come up with. And as I said, I want you to answer each of these because I think answering them completely is going to not just give us an idea of just the general concept that you have, but allow each of us to really feel how all of this is going to fit together. So the first question I have here is just, what is your basic chapter idea? Give me a sentence or two that lays out the concept. So I am not looking for anything wildly detailed here. I just want to know what your basic concept is. Like, I want to talk about workshops. I'm using kind of workshopping as the basic example over the course of this discussion that I'm going to have with you. I want to talk about workshops and why they are important for the creative writing classroom. I intend to talk about managing personalities in workshops, preparing students for workshops, making sure that the workshop moves smoothly, and that and discussing how we break things down after a workshop in order to talk to students about what they've learned so they can kind of concentrate and break down and deconstruct what has actually happened. That's what I need here. Just a couple of sentences. I don't want this to be too brief. I don't want you to just say, I want to talk about poetry. I want to go into a little more detail about that. And I know these questions that I'm giving you, it's all about detail, but I want us to start on the right foot here. Don't just give me 3 words. Make sure it's a couple of sentences here. And what's the first one? It's an obvious thing for me to ask for in a proposal is what your idea is. Seems fair. Second one, why is this concept valuable for a creative writing textbook? Now I want you to start thinking about how it's going to fit into our larger themes. So what is it that is going on with your chapter that makes it necessary inclusion or just overall valuable for what we're doing as a project? So if I'm carrying off my idea for workshopping, because the workshop model is in place for virtually all creative writing classrooms, it is essential to spend time talking about it. That's what I'm looking for here. I told you that I would also talk to you about questions that I did not ask. One of the questions that I was going to ask you, but I ultimately didn't, was how it fits in to the rest of the chapters that are being created here. And the ultimate reason why I didn't include it is because we don't fully know everything that we're doing yet. We don't have a clear sense of what every single person in this class is doing. So I feel it's unfair to ask you to talk about how your chapter fits in to all other chapters when we don't fully have them. But go back and look at some of our earlier conversations. Think about the way we talked about conceiving the textbook overall, and you can still think about how it's going to fit into that larger issue. Once I've got everybody's proposals, then we'll be able to talk more about how everything fits together. So tell me why this concept is valuable for a creative writing textbook. Why is this something that we should have? Right? It can't just be, it's the thing that I like to talk about. It has to make sure that, we have to make sure that there's a specific reason for this to be in here. Number 3, what are at least 3 things that you will be presenting in this chapter in order to teach the reader? Try to be specific. Ideas for exercises within the chapter, certain examples you want to provide, methods you want to employ. So what I'm looking for here is for you to start going beyond just the basic concept and the way it fits in to the teaching of creative writing. Now I want you to start giving me specific methods that you're going to be using within this chapter. So things that you can provide, as I said here, maybe there is a prompt or writing exercise that you have in here, or some sort of idea generation exercise that you have in here. Tell me about that. Even though I'm asking for 3 things here, if you want to give me a brief summary of a certain activity that you want to do in this chapter to help as a suggestion to students working on this, please do that. If you have like certain examples, like if you want to talk about, if I'm carrying on again with my workshop idea, if I wanted to provide examples of things that have happened in workshops and maybe offer follow-up study questions to the reader to help them understand how this fits, do that. Methods that you want to employ. Maybe there are going to be certain strategies that you want to put in this textbook. So think about the way a textbook is set up. I'm going to, if you see on this page on our Canvas discussion here, I also have a link to a creative writing textbook. Now this is a creative writing textbook. This isn't one geared toward teaching of creative writing. It's geared toward the writing of it. But I wanted to give you that because I wanted you to just kind of have a template for a chapter to look at. Obviously, this is a little bit different than what we're doing, but I want us to think about how this thing could look and the type of stuff that's in there. So take a look at that sample chapter to kind of get a sense of the things that you could be doing here. So yeah, I want 3 specific things. Try to be specific and try to develop those. I expect your entries on this discussion to be kind of lengthy, to have something to them, and that's going to be valuable to us. Like I said, this isn't just about you telling me what it is for my own sake. This is you using this as an opportunity to begin building the bulk of this chapter that you're working on. The 4th thing that I have is to come up with a couple of section headers that you could use in this chapter to help organize your information. Think of this almost as a sub-table of contents for your chapter. For instance, a chapter on workshops might include sections on preparing for the workshop, handling emotional responses from students, keeping a workshop group on task. Basically, think of this as an opportunity to outline your chapter with specific sections that you feel need to be in it. So often when we look at a chapter in a textbook, there are going to be multiple subtitles that are going to be within the chapter itself. And what I mean by that is you'll have headings on certain areas, and they will provide information on what the following few paragraphs will be. I want you to do that. You are not writing this chapter yet, but I want you to already start thinking about those subheadings as opportunities for things that you want to make sure you include. None of this is locked in. You're not signing a contract here that you're going to do everything that you are mentioning within this proposal. You're not. But what I want to make sure that we get across here is an opportunity for you to really think about what you want to accomplish here. So even if you end up changing what some of those subheadings are, that's fine. But I just want you to get a few of them. I use the word couple, but if you could get 5, that would be really valuable to you at this stage. So I suggest you push yourself as hard as you can in this one to make sure that we get a few things. So those are the 4 questions specifically that I wanted you to respond to. I say 4 questions. The last one doesn't even have a question mark, and they're obviously asking you for some lists within that. One thing that I wanted to ask, but I didn't because I felt like it was maybe unfair at this stage because we're still developing, is to write out your first paragraph of this chapter already. To give me an idea of how you want to start this. The first paragraph that you would write in this scenario in no way has to be what you finish with. In fact, it might just completely get cut. It might be so heavily revised that the original doesn't look like anything to do with what you have. But I wanted to think about that because I wanted us to really start focusing on what we're going to be doing. And sometimes when we can get a beginning, it's easier for us to work forward. I know from my own experience and in teaching writing, including creative writing for a long time, one of the hardest things we deal with is that blank page, right? I mean, is there much worse for a writer than just staring at a blank screen or a blank page, trying to figure out what needs to go there? And sometimes it's good for us to just write anything, and then, hey, magically, the screen's not blank anymore. And even if it isn't stuff that is particularly worthwhile for us in the long term, it's valuable to have it. So I want us to think about that. I'm not going to require it here. If you wanted to include that, that's awesome. But if you don't, that's okay. And the reason why I decided not to, as I said, it felt like maybe it's asking for too much here. I've already gotten 4 questions, a few of which will be pretty lengthy in terms of what the response will have to be. But I wanted to think a little bit about how this is actually going to sound. I intend for us to have workshops once we come back from break after spring break. We're going to spend time in class doing workshop type sessions. I'm going to have us use that time in class to talk about each other's works. This is going to be a great time for us to apply our workshop skills that we've talked about in class. It's also going to give us a chance to heavily improve what we're doing and to also make sure that it feels like there's a cohesive voice. Remember that first question that I told you that I wanted to ask but didn't? It was about how this is going to fit into the larger whole. And I didn't ask it because I don't know what the larger whole is completely yet. We're getting there. We're figuring it out. So for now, answer these 4 questions. You can consult the sample chapter that is from Janet Burroway's creative writing book, and I think it's a wonderful one. So let's start with that. And then I am looking so forward to getting these together. As I said, I hope some of you are able to get those for us soon. And so those of us who are still having trouble figuring out what to do can at least have some guidance from those of us who are a little more comfortable with what we want to do at this point. So yeah, I am very excited about these proposals. I can't wait to read them. Thank you for this. I hope everything is going well, and we can talk about all of these important things as we go on. Thank you, friends, and we'll see you soon.